Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And the spirits have a funny way of working. Oftentimes I connect with individuals or musicians who I'm not necessarily familiar with their backgrounds or even their music, but the vibe that they give off is just so positive and sort of just such in the light that it's impossible for me to ignore that, knowing that my mission at this point in my career, 7 years into as radio host, is to inspire people to be themselves. So when I find people that are already being themselves, it is really refreshing, especially when it's on the bandstand and especially when they're a rhythmist. And I got a chance today to talk to a great drummer. The sky is the limit. He's just came off the slopes. Mark Levy, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here, man, and really stoked to chat with you a little bit. You know.
It was you're. I kind of wanted you to just talk about the idea of with cats. The whole undertaking of it was. McDougal said it was the most serendipitous thing that's ever happened to him in his life, but. And I think he felt that. He said everybody kind of felt that way. But my question is, like, when I just saw you guys for reference, I just saw these guys up 9,000 feet above sea level in Crested Butte in Frisco, and I don't. I noticed that. Here's the point. How do you guys develop how do you get a bigger bag of tunes? McDougal said that you're going to possibly go in and do a third album. Where do the tunes? How do they emanate? Do you just start a groove? There are no vocals, so could you walk me through that?
Yeah, totally. They come from inside our minds and our souls. I guess with any music. But what I think is interesting about the music in circles around the sun, in particular, versus maybe like a band that's centered around a singer-songwriter or something like that, is that the music, because it's instrumental, I think it takes on a life, sort of different than if somebody were to write lyrics and have, hey, here's my, this is the verse lick, and here's like the hook for the chorus, and maybe here's the bridge, or maybe can you guys help me write a bridge? That's like kind of maybe more of a common songwriting as a group.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. At least. Yeah.
But with Cats, it's really just, like on the last album is probably the best way I can explain it, because we really just came in and said, like, okay, who's got something? And if you had something, you'd throw it out there. And then also there'd be just kind of like, I was just sitting in the studio, like playing a groove, and that ended up being something that we put down. I don't know specifically even what it was, or if that ended up being something that made it onto one of the records or not. But I know that we're all really, really excited about doing more in the studio and releasing a third album if we're able to. If the powers that be align once again, and my gut says that they will, and it'll be a great time. But I don't know. Did I answer your question?
And first of all, I should be also very clear on the Jake Feinberg Show. There are no right or wrong answers. It's complete stream of consciousness. So whatever comes to your mind. I just am more. Some of the songs, they're clearly different. The changes are subtly different. I think it's just coming from like. I hate labels in music, but I just wonder, like, did you ever spend time in sort of a pretentious, God, I hate it. I love jazz, but it just, the jazzer mentality versus whatever Circles is, which is different. I mean, have you spent time in sort of the bop purist circles, and how did you loosen people up? It seems to me like you've always you've been able to get out of your own way. I mean, I posted something. I told Rock Alarm that I tagged him in one of the posts that I saw videos that I played with you guys, and he's like, I'm so glad Mark's doing well. I'm like, yeah, he sounds like himself. I mean, how did you learn to sound like yourself? I mean, it's really important.
Oh man, because I think that's a really good question. I think it just is because it is. I do think it was a conscious choice that I made a long time ago, where I said I don't want to be that musician up on stage acting like somebody else wants him to act, or acting, trying to act cool, or like trying to act serious, or trying to act. I did that. When I was playing in orchestras and wind ensembles, small chamber ensembles, and the like. You can't fucking smile if you're back there smiling because you're like digging that. I mean, I guess you can. I would say the majority of, like, if you get into like a big orchestra and you're a pro and you're a badass and you're killing your part, I really doubt that the conductor would be like, "Excuse me, sir, on the snare drum, stop smiling." I doubt that would happen. But I think because I spent so much time in that world of putting on a tuxedo to go and play a concert.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
That was like, I think when I left that world, and Rock Alarm was like the sort of one of the two teachers that I had at the time that sort of shepherded me from that world into the world I am in now, and have been in ever since. Those guys, it was Jerry Leak, who teaches at New England Conservatory in Berkeley. Incredible world percussionist, just like master teacher, master player. He's written many books. He's incredible. Jerry Leak, if anybody's out there and wants to just have an outlet for amazing rhythmic knowledge, find Jerry. He has his own publishing company, so you can buy his books, I think, directly from him. That's Jerryle during that transition. And this all happened at the New England Conservatory, So, like, I was also so fortunate to be there as a classical percussionist out of high school, studying music. Like, wow, what a privilege,
No, this is really important. This is so important. I'm talking to Mark Levy here, one of the most gifted drummers, makes it look completely effortless on the bandstand, at least with Circles Around the Sun.
Oh,
but I mean, what was the shepherding like? Because there's a way to do it where you're denigrating or putting down other music, and then there's a way to sort of say, let the rock alarm, let the body dance.
Yeah.
I'd love you to just talk about these shepherding techniques that either Leak or Rock Alarm foisted on you.
Okay, yeah. So Rock Alarm, I'll just start with him, because I think for what we're talking about, he was more really like the guy that was just getting to the point. He saw very clearly and instantaneously in my playing that I was like, like in the box, I guess, for a lack of a better, phrase. I was very much, trying to like play the right thing all the time.
Wow.
And rarely, if ever, could you do that with Rock Alarm. But sometimes, he'd be like, yeah, that's good. Like, you did it there for a little bit. But now we need to make that little bit like longer.
Oh, I love it.
There you go.
It.
Like, there's the, so the way that his lessons worked as a drummer, he's an incredible drummer, but he didn't play much drums in the lessons. He was playing piano, like 80% of the time. And then sometimes he would show you things on the drums, and also just his style. is like maybe he would show you something, like it was going to be a quick little let me show you something, and then he'd be sitting there for like 30 minutes just like, incredible player. So like I learned a lot from him, playing with him on the drums and him on the piano, and him being like, no, stop, like what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Don't do that. Do anything but that, that kind of stuff. Or he'd be like, yeah, like getting into it while he's playing. Or one time I remember, it was amazing. He was like getting into it. He like reached down in the bag that was like on the floor next to me, pulled out this giant crystal and put it up on the piano. And he was like, he was kind of like, oh la la, boo la da da, kind of like he has this sort of language of his own, this like musical language. And I'll never forget those lessons in that little corner room at, like the fourth floor of Jordan Hall or whatever floor it was on. But man, I guess he was sort of tough love too, because he wasn't like, he would never give you lollipops. He'd never hand out lollipops. Like, it was always just like, yeah, man, you're doing good. Or like, man, you're not really hearing it right, and you're not feeling it right. Like, go home and contour this music. And that's like when you said, I'm sorry, tell me the phrase again.
Let the body dance.
Rhythmic. Yeah, let the body dance. So contouring was like the only assignment he would ever give me. It was never like, I want you to go home and transcribe this Tony Williams solo.
Right.
Record.
Yeah. Right.
That was like not the thing. The thing was like, go home and contour this Tony Williams solo or whatever. It was usually not like a drum solo. It was usually like a track. Like, go home and listen to John Coltrane. What's that? I'm spacing the name of this record. Dear Old Stockholm.
Yeah, right.
Love that record. He's like, go home and that was actually Roy Haynes with the quartet, not Elvin Jones for that session, interestingly enough. But I remember that being one of the things that he sent me home with. And then I came back and I kind of, you have to like, you show him like what you did. And basically contouring is interpretive dancing. It's just using your ears and then letting your body describe what you're hearing, essentially. So for me as a drummer, that was sort of like having trouble like opening up. That was the way he shepherded me into the world of like, look, you got.
Well, I mean, because I think what I hear is that what's so invigorating is just there's a homogenization of sound, mainly coming out of academia now, because you can tell students that have certain teachers, not drummer per se, but I mean horn players, they come out, they sound exactly like their teacher. With Rock Alarm, you have the contours, which means you just have the sort of framework of it. And then it allows you to put your own life force into the groove so that it's your voice, right? I mean, that to me is what it is completely about. And
100%, yeah.
And I mean,
also, like, good luck trying to sound like Rock Alarm.
Well, and the truth is, I cannot wait to send you our. I mean, he was a vibes player to start. I mean, he was really playing a lot of melodic stuff. And I mean, were you able to also, when he said you gotta, you really gotta contour this stuff out? I mean, do you think? I'm just asking you to talk to the general audience now, or any other drummers. I mean, do you think that the advice he was giving you was meant to be done in isolation, or were you able to shed at like the Middle East, or did you have gigs that you could sort of work the stuff out on with other peeps, or was it primarily by yourself?
Oh yeah, a lot of both. Mm-hmm. At that time I was shedding like anywhere from like 3 to 6, sometimes 8 hours a day.
Yeah, it was a full-time gig. Yeah, you were shedding.
Yeah, on top of like the rehearsals you were going to for school, and maybe the extracurricular combo you were doing with your buddies, or like, whatever. It was, so there was a lot of both, shedding by myself, playing with a metronome sometimes, probably played with a metronome quite a bit, if not, almost always back then.
Now what was the reason? What was that about? Because I mean, why did you you just wanted to make sure that you were in time, or why would you lean on that?
Yeah, I mean, so like in my view, the primary purpose, primary role of a drummer is to reinforce the time. It's not, I don't think it's like a demonstrative thing. It's not like, here's the time, listen to me.
Exactly.
I'm the drummer.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like if you have, I just think it's really, really super important to have a non-emotional, totally objective relationship with time as a drummer. Because if you're in the moment and musically it's like, you're blasting off with your band and like things are amazing and maybe you're not breathing as much as you should, like good luck keeping the time solid if you don't have a good relationship with it, like at your core, so like it's kind of like it's like meditation, really. Like if you don't do the work, you're not going to get the benefit. You can talk about how good meditation is all you want, but I think that there's no shortcuts there. I think it's the same way with time. There's no shortcuts. You just got to spend, like, when I was a kid, I like young, sort of weirdo, like just getting into drums. I was just like so like just in love with drums right off the bat. I was like 10 years old, and then like school came around and there was like ensembles, and I got into the drum line and all this stuff, and I just like was living music, which there's another. I thought I was living music. That's a rock alarm term that I'm still unpacking.
Oh, definitely. I cannot wait to send you my interview with Rock Alarm. You're going to be dying. Go ahead.
Oh man, yeah, right on. Yeah, so it's like I would sleep with a metronome on sometimes.
Yeah, I dig.
Like it, and like now I think it's crazy, but I don't know. I think it all served its purpose. And also I don't think that music. I don't ever like Circles Around the Sun. Really, it's super rare. I haven't done a session in the last 5 years, probably, where somebody's asked me to play to a click. But actually, that's not true. Like, they might be like, we're going to do this track to a click. And it's like, cool. I love that. My old friend, the click.
It brings you back to that yogic state.
It's like, more often than not, especially if somebody's trying to do some post-production and they know they're going to be editing a lot of takes together or something. I've been in more recently are more like organically focused. So it's like, Circles Around the Sun never ever play to a click, and maybe it's apparent sometimes. I don't really know, but the goal there is, you have a reference with like a objective reality of rhythms, and it's just like a metronome. It's just steady time. So then once you have that, like go and be free, because you should have the foundation and you need the foundation, but then you can go and play around time and odd time signatures, or just things, not rushing or dragging. And really at that point it's an energy game. And I think a lot of music is an energy game, where you're constantly having to stay in the moment, kind of working with that energy. And if you let your energy lapse, then you'll feel it in the music. You'll hear it.
It's interesting you bring that up, because when I first interviewed Billy Cobham, when he went down to Baggies on the Lower West Side. It was just for a while. He met McLaughlin at a CTI session or A&M session, and so it was just him and John. And after a day or so, basically, straight playing, he realized the things he needed to work on was playing in odd meters, and he said, and his breathing. He needed to work on his breathing. Especially because when you're playing bar after bar after bar after bar, and I mean, can you talk? As honestly as I love this idea of this whole thing of objective relationship to time as opposed to subjective. What would be like? So you guys know there's no click tracks in Cats, and there's you're not playing to a click, and there's an objective relationship. But what could you give an example to a layperson about what would be a subjective relationship to time in cats, like adhering to something or?
Well,
Go ahead.
maybe I should just clarify what I meant by that. I meant like objective relationship to time because a metronome doesn't care.
I did.
You know, it doesn't
I
care how you feel.
did.
It's just, yeah. So then like subjective is like we all, you know, we all have a subjective relationship with time. You know, so I think like everybody, I guess I was just kind of speaking about that in terms of like, as a student, I think it was really important to just study and have like an anchor like that was the metronome for me, because I was also in this world of like I was studying classical Indian music on the tabla with Jerry Leek, which is very regimented and you know, it's like math basically. It's all very composed, and a lot of the information is done orally, so it's like super cerebral, and like I could just feel my mind like growing in that way. But
no, I mean, I
also
appreciate
studied
you. I mean, here's what I wanted you to. I appreciate you clarifying that. But just what was you had never. I just want to ask you this question because it's confounding to me. And this is a good lesson for anybody out there. What was the hardest part for you? For the 3 days that you made Circles Around the Sun. I mean, and just for the point of reference, you guys were given about a week of time to put together 5 hours of music. You had never played with Dan Horn in your life.
You're talking about the first. That was actually, we were given 2 days.
2 days.
To make 5 hours of music, and we had never met in our life.
So I mean, just from your point of view, your personal, I mean, you would already have credentials. You know, McDougal told the story. They said, "Do you know a drummer?" He said, "I absolutely do." Talk about that experience. What was the hardest thing, especially because you didn't stop playing? You had to just keep playing these large chunks of music at one time.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. It was really, so I guess just picture this, you know, you're just like this kid, and you're working your tail off, road dogging it with your band from Colorado, and like, hey, I like the way you play, let's keep in touch. And then like flash forward to like a couple years later, you're getting a call from Neil Casal that's like, hey man, I got the call to do this thing, you know, from Justin Kreuzman. It's like, you know, we're gonna be recording the set break music for the Grateful Dead's Charity Watershed.
Man,
you know, I'm just like, you know, why are you calling me? You know, that's like in my head. I'm like, the voice in my head is screaming like, why is he calling you? Like, what's going on right now? You know, and then it was sort of like. Then I had to like just calm down for a second and be like, okay, who cares why he's calling me? He's calling me, and I'm gonna go and kill this session, you know. And this is like, actually, I talked to my brother Ben plays bass in the Boston Symphony, and he won that gig when he was 22 years old. So it was kind of like he sort of like shocked the bass world, at least in my perspective. You know, I was his younger brother, like super proud of him, but also he just like, you know, locked down one of the best gigs in music. Really.
At 22. I mean, that's unheard of.
I digress.
That's fine.
I often do.
No. This is the point. The point is that you. What did he say to you though? What did he say to you?
I talked to him. Thank you. I feel that. Yeah. I talked to my brother, and I was like, dude, Ben, I got this crazy gig to go and record for like 2 days. And we're just gonna like record all these like extended sort of like background jams, and like I'm actually not exactly sure what my perception of what the
right.
Thing was gonna be.
I don't think anybody did.
You know,
yeah,
it's hard to say now in retrospect if I had any idea at all what it was gonna be. I probably didn't really. So I talked to my brother. I'm like, dude, I don't know. I'm kind of like, I'm super nervous. I don't know how I'm gonna go in there and crush it. And he's like, dude, you're thinking about this all wrong. Don't think about why they called you. Just, be stoked that they did. And then what you need to worry about is showing up, finding your center, and contributing to the music. So it's like, wow, that just sort of like erased all of, like, he basically saying, like, there's no point in worrying, which is wise words there anyway. But
And he
so
said be part of the conversation, right? Contribute, be an accompanist, right?
Yeah, just show, like, be there, find your center, and then contribute from a real place. And that's kind of going back to your previous question. Like, I didn't want to try to worry about, like, okay, you got to get into, like, drumming mark mode now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just want to be me. I want it to be like a real expression of music and communicating through music and vibration, and that is it. So, like, if people think that maybe, I don't know, obviously nobody's come up to me and said to my face, I think it's stupid that you smile all the time. What are you doing? Or something like that. But I'm sure that like, thought, I don't know, I just, like, can't help but smile when I'm playing, because it's all happening. And sometimes it's not all happening, and it's not all smiles. Sometimes it's like, and
right.
You're like a bulldog, like, trudging through the whatever, and sometimes I feel like that too, but that's cool, and that's like a different emotion. It's not always that. It's just whatever it is, it's real, and that's, like, cool. You don't even have to worry about it.
Well,
So
no, let me just be clear. Don't ever stop smiling, because there's only two things you can do. And Steve Gadd told me this. You can either look towards the light or the dark, and for me, you're just a beacon of light. On top of the fact that you're just, like, you make it look effortless. So, I mean, if you're at a cat show and you're in a bad mood, like, maybe then you'd be resentful if Mark Levy was smiling ear to ear. But otherwise, it's like, it's just part of the gumbo, man. I mean,
if
to
you're
me,
in a bad mood at the end of the show, I mean, maybe that's, yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
it's coming, like you told me up in Frisco, like, it's like medicine for you.
It is.
That, it's also medicine for me. And, like, to hear you say that, and, just about consistent rhythm over a extended period of time in a group of people, I think that there's got to be an undeniable brain chemistry reaction happening when you just do that. I mean, if you've ever meditated for, you have to meditate for, in my experience, usually like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
At the minimum, to, like, really feel like some sort of a transcendent mental state. And I think that why wouldn't that be the case in music too? And I think that Circles Around the Sun is just, like, an amazing opportunity to throw colors and, just, like, move slowly without any, we're not slowly, I guess, just moving, like, at a steady pace. We're not, like, trying to go anywhere too fast. We're not, like, trying to make all the moves, like, ba 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 pow. It's like, that's not the kind of music that it is. Which, all that's great. All kinds of music are fantastic, but, like, you don't pull out a hammer to screw in a screw. Like, so in this music, we're using a totally different tool set than I think is common, and that's why I then started feeling and also seeing and getting the feedback that the music sort of is, like, it's able to kind of, like, take you to where you want to go, or, like, another place, just, like, kind of transport you and let you wander. That there it is. Let it wander.
Let it wander. Well, I mean, listen, I mean, it's the best. I mean, I can tell you right now, being back in Tucson, I'm still feeling that it's the best antidepressant in the world, and part of it is the music, and part of it is the cats. Great cats, and you're one of them. And I got to go pick up my daughters, but let's just figure out. I'll keep this on the shelf, and we'll merge the two. We'll do another hour. We just cooked for 30 minutes. It was go back on the slopes or go meditate, and just keep doing your thing, man. You're saving me, man.
Hey, man, thank you so much. I mean, we're doing it with the hopes that it can serve a purpose in people's lives in a positive way. And also we're very mindful of the fact that it's a great privilege to be able to make music. And I mean, I shouldn't talk for the rest of the guys, but I think that's obvious.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773's Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone. You can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and it's an honor to bring back fantastic drummer. He's got a gig, so he's got some things to do. Mark Levy, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, man. Good to be back.
I just wanted you to talk a little bit, could be in any setting, but how you learned to play with volume when you didn't necessarily have the electronics. I mean, I'll read you this quote from Harold Jones. He just talked about the idea that he said Dinah Washington owned a club in Southside Chicago. I was in the house band there. I played McKee's Show Lounge and the Pershing. Playing in different bands and different kinds of rooms, you learn how to play with volume according to what you're hearing. I always had to do mine physically and acoustically. So that's what I wanted to ask you about. How did you create volume physically and acoustically?
Cool. Physically, I guess for a drummer, volume is kind of a physical thing. I mean, one of like a good example of that goes way back to my days in the drum line in high school, and we would refer to dynamic markings in inches, actual literal height in inches. So like a pianissimo would be at 1 inch, and like a piano would be at maybe like 2 inches, and then mezzo piano 3 inches, mezzo forte 4 inches, like, and on until you're at like fortissimo, and you're at like full extension, like probably about 16 inches or something like that. So that physically, like, if you have a wider stroke or a higher stroke, it's gonna correlate to a higher volume. So I guess is that sort of along? Does that answer the question?
Well, I mean, no. I mean, what I was trying to get. I mean, it's a little bit obsolete in the time that we're in now, because you basically can go in for a sound check and get your sound the way you want it. But I just wonder, like on the tour that you were just on with Cats, like were there rooms that like you had to create volume through your own human soul, and because the acoustics, you couldn't hear yourself so well?
Well, I sort of have, I'm sort of in a position where I can't really answer that, like, because I'm cheating the natural system because I'm using in-ear monitors. So I've got like these, I made the plunge recently, and I bought these.
Holy cow! Are you serious? You have monitors? This is like very Grateful Dead-ish.
Yeah. Well, so everybody in the band is using floor monitors. Especially helpful in venues like the ones that we were just playing.
And why is that? Why is that? Why is that?
Okay, so imagine you're in a little club, and the ceiling is, like 10 feet high, and it's pretty small. Like a perfect example, probably, a lot of music lovers out there have been to this place, the Maple Leaf Bar in New Orleans is a perfect example of like a very like cozy little confined club. And it's kind of like a shotgun room in that the stage side, and all the sound is very contained. So take that picture and then juxtapose that with the Beacon Theater. So like that stage in itself, the stage, just the deck, is probably bigger, by a magnitude of multiples than the whole Maple Leaf Bar building.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So then you add in like 2,000 seats and balconies and a 100-foot ceiling and curtains and like all this crazy flatback reverb coming from just the natural sound coming off the stage. Just, it's a totally crazy different environment than compared to like the Maple Leaf or a small stage in a small room like that. So I found it hard to compete sonically in that environment or those big stages, and still get a good picture of the dynamic range, because I was relying so much just to hear like Adam's keyboards. I was relying so much on the monitor, and then to like hear that over the volume that I felt like I had to play to fill that space, it ended up being like the threshold ended up being super high. And then I felt like we were losing a lot of dynamic subtlety, and the dynamic range was just compressed towards the higher, louder side of the spectrum. So I decided to use I have an in-ear monitor rig. They offer, like, just by putting them in my ears without any signal going, just to start out with, serious isolation, and then you can just feed in whatever you want. So I ended up feeling like I could really hear every single note I was playing, and the nuance of ghost notes on the snare drum, or light touch on the cymbal. And meanwhile, I could also hear every one of Adam's notes crystal clear, and every one of Neil's notes crystal clear, and the bass response on those things is even really awesome. So I guess, to go back to your question, I feel like I can't really answer that honestly, because we're sort of existing in like a controlled environment that just exists inside of my ears.
I think it's really well put. Do you guys talk about, like, I mean, the Beacon was the biggest venue you played in on this tour?
No, not, which is crazy, right? But we were opening for Green Sky Bluegrass.
All right.
Who, they're just on fire right now, and I've known those guys for, like 10 years or so, almost 10 years, and it's so cool to see them just reaching that level of success, filling those rooms, selling out some of those rooms in some cases. So, like, we played this room called the Met in Philly that just reopened after being dark for like 50 years and having some, whatever turmoil of a large theater like that. That place was like the biggest brick building I've ever been inside of my whole life. It was the size of the walls. They're just normal, regular sized bricks. But man, it was just the scale of this place was so huge. I think that might have been a venue, but also we ended the run at the Tabernacle in Atlanta, which is like 2,500 cap or something like that. And honestly, I don't even know officially what the Beacon is off the top of my head, so I could be wrong. But in any case, they're all really large venues, so the way that they would react sonically was a little bit different, obviously, from room to room, but very similar also in a lot of ways. So, the other guys chose just to go, acoustic, or just with, like, floor monitors, but I don't know, it really helps me out in those venues.
No, I mean, it's
to have, like, a microscope on my sound.
Do you how many ghosts, do you play a lot of ghost notes and cats?
Yeah. I mean,
can you explain the subtleties of the I guess, cuz I mean, when you're going, like, I just remember, like, talking to Ozzy Allers when he was playing with Garcia, and, like, they'd just go for, like, as many bars as you wanted, someone could go get a drink and come back and someone's still playing. Obviously, you know what I'm getting at. It's like, I mean, in order to keep the groove where it needs to be and the pulse, but you do. I mean, can you explain how you use ghost notes to stretch the vocabulary?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, so I guess I could, like, sing if I was gonna play a groove like boop, bat, boop, bat. That doesn't have any ghost notes. But then, like, ghost notes, you can also think of them as ornamentation, or basically, if you were to boil it all down, you could just say, like, you have ghost notes and accents, or, like, accents and taps. Sometimes, like, a tap is synonymous with a ghost note. It's just a much lighter touch on the snare drum, or, I mean, usually we're talking about ghost notes with the snare drum. It's possible to put it everywhere on the kit, I guess, but, somebody's talking about, like, a funky groove with a lot of ghost notes. It, almost for sure they're talking about ghost notes on the snare drum. So it'd be like, boop, bop, da, da, boop, bop, da, boop, bop, da, da, boop, bop. It's like all that stuff in between is the ghost notes. So essentially, I use ghost notes with cats specifically. It's the chatter or the comping that's going on between the backbeats, which are sort of like the goalposts, you know? And
I
like
love it. Yeah.
everything is sort of happening within the pocket, which if you where the one is and where the backbeats are, and then you've got a pocket just within that framework. So then whatever happens in that framework is basically just, you know, for cats and my playing with like Neil soloing or Adam soloing, or even like Adam accompanying Neil or vice versa, there's a lot of comping going on. It's like rhythmic comping within the pocket. So without ghost notes, I wouldn't be able to do that, because those notes that are being played as ghost notes would become like just homogenous with like the backbeat, and it would sound like boo ba boo ba 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 boo ba boo. You know, like that isn't funky. Whereas you play the same exact rhythm, boo ba da, boo ba. You know, my beatboxing skills are not on point.
No,
Right?
the
But,
point is that it allows it to breathe.
Totally, and it allows it to breathe, and you're sort of outlining the space,
That's right.
or like, you know, moving through the space, like, but holding the space at the same time, you know? So yeah, it's kind of like, it is exactly that. It lets it breathe, but also, you know, ghost notes are what make a groove feel the way it does. Like, you could just play that simple rock beat, boom, tut, boom, tut, boom. And if you put in some swung ghost notes versus some straight ghost notes, it's going to be a completely different feel, you know? But also, depending on the volume that you choose to play the ghost notes, and even playing the ghost notes in the center of your snare drum versus playing them towards the edge, you're going to get a totally different timbre, you know? And that's like just a dynamic choice. You know, like, how strong should these ghost notes be? Should they be pretty like laid back and swinging, or should they be like, you know, a little bit more staccato and like really pushing the pocket, you know? And I guess it just depends on what's going on. And then it's just like it's a matter of using your ears and just reacting appropriately to what the other musicians are doing sonically and what they're doing feel-wise, and then also how those things relate to each other. You know, like Neil is amazing at kind of like this, I don't know, he's got this super rad like metal like part of his background.
Absolutely.
In his DNA,
Yeah.
his musical DNA, and that stuff totally comes out like when he's really like, you know, he'll just get this like freaking beefy, gnarly, rich guitar tone that, like, if I were to respond to that in, you know, a light with like a light touch, it would be kind of messed up for, you know, energetically. So like when Neil plays that kind of a like gnarly tone, everybody else is reacting with a timbre that, you know, can like support that tone. You know, as a soloist, like then, you know, in relation to a soloist, our job as rhythm players and, you know, comping them is to support it and, like, you know, help keep that wave underneath, you know, the board, or like, you know, the carpet underneath his feet, or whatever metaphor you want to use. But I think it definitely gets back to like a volume relates to tone, relates to, you know, energy, and like where you're placing things then has an effect on how it feels, if it's laid back or if it's really like driving and tough sounding, you know, all that stuff. I mean, I guess that's why they're instruments, you know. We play instruments because it's like they're instruments of our voice, you know, like our inner voice. And that that's reflected in, how hard we hit the instrument, or at least as a drummer, directly related to how hard you're striking the instrument. And it doesn't mean it has to be like angry and hard and there's, needs to be tension or aggression necessarily, You can play really legato tone, or like really working, but the sound is just like unbelievable. Like, I was just listening to like the Jimmy Page with the Black Crowes at the Greek album today while I was skiing, and just the way that Steve Gorman plays the drums, dude. It's like I don't know, maybe it's because I've also seen him play, so I know how like physically, he's just kind of commanding presence. He's just like a really big dude, and he makes the drums look tiny, and he just like beats the shit out of them and has an incredible tone. And you could close your eyes at many points in that album and think you're listening to Bonham, or even like Chris Robinson's doing such an amazing job of singing those parts. He sounds a lot like Robert Plant at times, But again, it's kind of like these guys are doing that thing, like the Zeppelin thing, and like that involves like a massive amount of energy. And if they weren't exerting that energy, it wouldn't sound like that. Just like straight up, there's no way of like, there's shortcuts, in the energy game. It like is or it isn't.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I mean, I guess there's a spectrum of is and isn't, but you know what I mean? It's like you gotta go through it to get to it. That's like, I love that little saying.
This is one thing. I mean, I know it's like taking interludes for the dead off the table. I was transcribing my second interview with Al Di Meola, and I mean, I'm sure that he has. I mean, I'm sure it's all love-hate with him, because he just says what's on his mind, and he's very opinionated, and he's talking about really the modern day recording session. What you just talked about, the one word I would encapsulate is it's all about focus. You guys are completely in the moment, riding that wave together, listening to each other. But in the recording scene, especially with Gen Xers like myself or even younger cats, the technology is so insatiable. The desire for the technology is so insatiable that they'll go through Di Meola was talking about modern, going through, they'll play a tune, and then the drummer's on the drum stool checking his emails or checking his texts, and with Return to Forever, I mean, they didn't. There was one phone in the control room, and they told the secretary, "Turn it off," and that was it. And so they were even within the takes of the tunes. They were they were talking, they were working stuff out, and I'm wondering, what is the credo of Circles, or in general, just sort of I mean, I know he's right, but then I see Authentic Cats, and I wonder to myself, maybe, I mean, he was like saying, if I ever do another session, I'm going to tell the cats to leave their phones at the hotel. And he's like, of course they won't, because it's like drugs, But what is it like for Circles? Do you guys are you disciplined and focused in the studio like that, where they're really you're able to focus exactly on what the intention of the entire session is about?
I would say so. I mean, of course, our experience as a band in general, but specifically in the studio, is pretty limited scope, if like all things considered. But I can tell you what it was like for those. Basically, we spent a total of like, in the history of the band, we've only spent a total of like 6 or 7 days of tracking.
Not a huge test case to go on there. There's
Not a huge
not a
test
huge
case,
not a
but
huge sample
still.
size there. Yeah, right.
Right. But still, I definitely, and that's like with the full band. We on that last record there was a few other days of just overdubs going on, so that's a different vibe because like, the guy that's working on his overdubs, like everybody else in the control room with like varying levels of involvement and like what's going on because like yeah, you might be checking your emails, but also you're there. But then when we were tracking as like a full band, I feel like it was a lot more focused. We'd be like, all right, let's get in there, and we just all go in the room, and we'd be in there for like, like an hour or two, or whatever. Just like, but there's very little. Just also, I think in the process, like you mentioned, they get done with the take, and the drummer is like whatever checking his email. In the Cat's recording process, there's really no like time for that because we're all recording everything live. So we'd like do a take and then just like do another take of something else or maybe the same thing.
It's a beautiful way to do it. I mean, the funny thing is that's exactly the style of I just interviewed Dennis Coffey today, from the Funk Brothers, the second iteration, and like they had to do each recording session was 3 hours. They had to do one song perfectly in an hour. They had to read a huge rhythm chart. They had to get a feel for the tune and then do it. So doing it live, you're not going to be. I mean, your tunes are also really long too. They tend to go on for a long time. It's not a 3-minute radio-friendly thing.
Right. No. Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting, like, interesting.
When you are what do you say? I mean, you've been on other recording sessions. This is not your only gig. So, how do you feel? Have you been a leader of a band or on a session yet?
Not no. I can't really say that I have been, honestly. Not for like a full. Not like a full session or anything. But I've been like kind of in producer role before.
I was just gonna say to you, what do you think? I want you to talk about what the Mark Levy strengths of bringing the producer cap to the table because, whatever, a producer cap is a little bit different than just being a session cat. But what do you bring? What are the intangible qualities that you think you bring? You give an example if you can.
To the studio specifically.
Yeah, well, if you in the production setting, I guess what I'm trying to get at is the values. Are you just always trying to facilitate? Are you trying to keep the vibe the right way? Are you trying to, what are the intangible qualities that you bring to help a record be a good record?
Yeah, well, cool. Yeah, there's definitely so many variables that would affect the way that I would approach a session. Everybody's different, and like some people are very collaborative and some people are more like, here's the thing and this is what I want you to do, rather than like, hey, this is the thing and what do you want to do?
Exactly. I did. I did.
So yeah, there's definitely like different, kind of different playing fields in that sense. But I guess what I think I like to think that I bring to sessions is, I don't know. I've been a strength of mine just as a drummer to be able to lay down full takes. Just kind of like make the post-production vibe a little bit less like intrusive to the musical process, and like, but sometimes also music is designed to be heavily produced, so like that doesn't really apply in those cases. But
do you think that do you have a historical arc enough to know if that's always been the case, or is it only more in like mod times when like post production's been You know, like like you said, sometimes it's essential.
Well,
You can say
I
no.
wish
I
I
don't know
was
the
like,
answer to that. I really
yeah,
don't know.
no, I don't know if I do, because I kind of think like in order to have that kind of a scope, I think you'd have to have lived through
Yeah, dig. Yeah.
the age of tape, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
then like know what the process is like. You know, if you're recording the tape, I mean, you're doing whole takes, and then maybe you're splicing in some sections or something like that. But that's like takes
Well,
a lot
I mean, that leads back to
to do that.
what Dennis Coffey said to me today. He said, you know, if they couldn't make a mistake, that was his point. You could not make a mistake because then they'd have to stop the tape.
Do
They'd
the
have,
whole thing again.
and do the whole thing again. So you really
Yeah.
had to be right in it, you know. And I guess you know, have I guess has there been a time when you've been looked to provide some kind of production in some way? Maybe you weren't the producer on the session, but you provided some kind of intangible or some kind of bridge that solved a problem.
Yeah, for sure. You know, like with the Congress, with recording with those guys, it was very, I don't know, like how to really explain it. It was sort of these guys, they were bringing fully formed songs, but then there was a lot that needed to happen. Like, you know, there'd be like a song form, and they'd have like the intro and the verse and the chorus and the bridge, and it'd all be done. But then like putting it all together as a cohesive song played by those individual players, it's like, you know, I would offer oftentimes like, okay, well, we can use this rhythmic figure to take us from the chorus into the bridge.
I love
or,
it. I
you know,
love it.
whatever.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, that kind of, just that sort of feedback. A lot of the time, you know, I have a decent understanding of harmonic and melodic concepts in music, but not really like enough to be like, hey man, I heard you play that, you know, B flat minor chord, and like maybe you could use this different voicing on it, and you know, use
No, but
use
there's
this, like,
but you're above average, no doubt about it.
well, I mean, I definitely think that I know. I guess, you know, think I trust my ear
Right.
pretty good at
Right.
this point, but you know, I'm always mindful of who I'm talking to, because it's like you can communicate things like to somebody that just has like an innate understanding of their instrument and doesn't necessarily have like a like, you know, a real theoretical knowledge of like their instrument. It's different, you know. It's just like they don't want to talk about like, you know, what voicing they're playing and on a specific chord, you know. It's just more of like a like broader strokes sort of thing. And then I guess that's kind of where I think that you know, it's good to be able to adapt to those different things. Like if somebody wants to get really specific and they want me to make a chart with a specific, you know, groove or specific fills or whatever the case, like let's do that. If they just want it to be like, hey, let's just improvise on this theme and like see what happens, like that's cool too, you know. But I guess my point is you have to be able to do.
No, I mean this is the point. The point is you're no, I mean in completely Levian fashion. I mean you're proving my point in the sense that I asked Ron Carter about it, but I think rhythm sections can. You just explained it. You can increase musical vocabulary, not totally on your own, but by building those bridges or those rhythmic patterns, you're taking simpler, broad. You know, I don't know what the right word is, but you're taking more square tunes and you're able to stretch them so that they have a bridge and that it can go on longer and be interesting to those who are listening to it, which, I mean, that's what Tony Williams and Ron were doing. Obviously, there were incredible melodic players like Wayne Shorter and Miles and that. But I mean that's sort of like, I mean,
Well,
go ahead.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but like you mentioned Miles. I mean, he's like one of the ultimate examples of a guy that knew everything about music, but he couldn't read a note.
Exactly.
It's like, so what good is like all of that like book knowledge if you can't really get, like, that was sort of Rockalam's, a few times he'd say to me, like, I don't know what you're doing here in school learning how to play music. You should be out there.
Rockalam, I mean, he was really ribbing you, man. He was going after you. I love it, man.
He's like, you don't get. I think he was just kind of like, the authentic learning doesn't happen via, books and. But I don't know. I also kind of disagree with that in some sense because I think it's important to have.
Oh no, 100%. I think it's unreal. I think Rockalam, the fact is he lived in Charles Mingus's apartment building. He was playing vibes with these guys,
right.
With J.C. Moses. I mean, that kind of loft scene that didn't exist at New England Conservatory. You kidding me? So it's like,
Yeah, and you're exactly right. That's totally where he's coming from, and that's like totally why he sees it that way. And like, damn, if any of us are fortunate enough to live in the building with Mingus growing up and like get to actually jam with these cats and like hang with them because his dad was involved with all of them, so it's like that's incredible. If goddamn, like, if you talk about authentic education, but at the same time I think what's authentic education without like an authentic desire from the student or the people to make authentic music? So then it's like, if I don't know, you could be the best. I don't know. It's just how there's a certain like all the stars have to align. I think in order, there's just a lot to then at the end of the day you churn out a musician from this institution. And I guess specifically speaking of NEC, it's like they, I think, do an incredible job of offering a place where you can find your own way through the world of institutional music and come out retaining some of your own voice or your whole own voice and like not churning out like cookie cutter players, not, which I think, we don't have to talk about, the state of music education.
No, I mean, here's the thing. I do want to tell you though. I mean, and this is, we are now completing set one of our interview. We got another we got to do a whole nother set, but
yeah, I'm down.
But here's the thing about Rockalam. He was a really troubled cat. I've interviewed. I mean, that my point is that Levy. My point is that to live the blues or the jazz life, it has to be this struggle. That's how you learn to tell your own story. And do you feel like you are? I mean, we know the struggles that it takes to be a touring musician or a professional musician, but how do you feel like in your evolution your story is coming along? Because that part of Rockalam's part of his journey has been to has been dealing with the madness of it,
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I guess so. To answer the question, like, how do I feel about my journey through my path through the music journey? I guess I feel like I haven't taken any shortcuts, and it makes me feel good that I do feel like.
What would be an example of a shortcut?
Well, here, first of all, also, I should say I don't really think that any shortcuts were offered to me. whether
No,
or
it's
not
fine. But I mean, I'm
taken
trying to
them.
get like, no, I understand you went the distance, but like,
Well,
but
I'm still in the. I mean,
yeah, I
who
mean,
knows
yeah, I
how
mean,
long the
it's
distance
long
is?
distance runner, yeah,
I got a long ways to go. Hopefully,
yeah, definitely.
But I guess, yeah. Well, I don't know if I have any examples of shortcuts. Well, if
Just go with
I
with
guess,
the idea of like of you're talking about just briefly you said the state of music education, and it's just the dilemma is just a homogenization of sound. People are just coming out sounding like themselves, and you have to have real life experience to sing your song. So I just want to know, like, in your
yeah,
journey, where you feel you're at in that point.
yeah. Well, in Denver, Colorado, and I was lucky to end up in a public school system that had really great attention to the arts, and that was a great start. And then post my public school education, going to NEC, and then post NEC and kind of during my summers and my breaks and stuff, like road dogging it around with my high school buddies in a funk band. We were definitely, I feel like that those years that I spent on the road in vans, gnarly drives, shitty gigs, no people listening. Sometimes people did listen and gave you encouragement, and it was like
I did. Oh man, yeah.
it was
I
like
mean, that's
was
it,
just
man.
so that's basically, I spent like 10 years or so between like that band of dudes from high school and then the Congress. And meanwhile, obviously you're practicing, rehearsing, self-care, especially as a drummer. I mean, I personally haven't experienced a lot of drummers talking about their like journey with their bodies. And that's been, maybe we can talk about that next time or something, but that's been a super interesting part of the whole journey for me, because it led me to yoga and mindfulness meditation, and then the intersection of those things with music. It was like that is like totally opened up a whole new realm of like living music, because I started realizing, well, if my body isn't where it needs to be, then I'm not going to be able to play the way I need to or want to. And then it's like, in the same respect, if your mind isn't where it should be, then how are you going to be able to play the music that you're capable of if you were in like a more centered place mentally, like a healthier place mentally and physically. So that sort of has, in my later, the last like 10, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10
Yeah,
years.
no,
So it's
I've
been
been
like a big focus.
I've been taking your advice about. Um, I can't get to 20 minutes of Tai Chi though. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
20 minutes of meditation, that's when you start to burn. But I
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
I mean, the whole thing. All right, I'll let you jam, but are you off the road for a minute? I mean, we should finish this up. This is good stuff.
Yeah, man. So yeah, this week I'm playing a bunch of gigs and up here in Vale, and then on Friday morning, actually, my girlfriend Corinne and I are going to Mexico for a week.
Rock on, rock on.
We're gonna go see some music down there, do a little, see some Panic and North Mississippi All Stars, and
That's
something
fantastic.
else I think with Ivan Neville is going on or something. And then after that, we're gonna take a couple more days going do a little super chill vibe for my birthday on a beach. But
Yeah. So
just,
yeah.
I'll be
Let's
gone for like a
link
week,
back.
and then back for no cats run until April. So I'm told.
All right, yo, because I'm going to be up in Keezy country doing chronicling the Merry Prankster next week. So
Cool.
whenever you go, like in February, let's.
Yeah, I'm back at the beginning of February, so we can totally link up.
All right, dude. Much love. Have a ball, man. Be safe and have a ball.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, man. Much love. Keep it up.
Thanks, dude.
Later, dude. Peace. Part 2 with Mark Levy in the books. We'll be back with Mason Williams tomorrow.